it's no secret. Anyone that listens probably knows that the real estate industry is changing. A lot of things are, putting pressure on business owners, right? And so we've got to think like really outside the box.
Hey, welcome to the Real Estate Ish Show. I have David Morse here today. He is the CEO and general manager. I'm going to get this wrong. Keller Williams, Arizona Realty.
You nailed it, man.
Ah, yeah, buddy.
Good job.
And you run a podcast, right?
We have a podcast, Real Talk with David, rebranded from the All In podcast about 50 episodes ago.
And you're 100 and how many in?
170, I think.
Wow, I think I should count. I don't know. But you're roughly in the 30s or 40s.
Well, bro, my setup does not look like this though, so I feel honored to be here with you.
I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, ooh, what can I add to my podcast? My wife hates it. I'm like constantly ordering crap, And
yeah, I'm gonna bring my producer next time and be like, just duplicate what Ryan has.
That's awesome. So I'm actually curious about your podcast, if you don't mind starting there. It's Real Talk with you, but like, is it all real estate related or is it just, what is it about?
Yeah, so honestly, Ryan, I started it when I moved to Arizona back in 2020, really on this idea of how do I get every real estate agent in Arizona to know my name? And obviously I wasn't early to the podcast game, but I would say that I was relatively early in the real estate brokerage space, meaning there wasn't a lot of brokerage owners and managers that were doing podcasts, right? And so it really was kind of a leading kind of tip of the spear way for me to get into relationship with a lot of the top agents, people that you've had on this show, who I was able to get in front of and get to know. And it was my introduction into the real estate market because I'm not from here. So that's where I started it. And so, yeah, it's mostly real estate, but also a lot of thought leaders, anyone interesting I want to talk to.
Would you say one of your superpowers is execution?
No, I actually wouldn't.
I asked that because I want to know what your superpower is.
So I really leveraged my internal network inside of Keller Williams internationally, since no one really inside of KW was podcasting, to really grow my audience count that way before I really went kind of public facing, if you will.
So you moved here in 2020. I believe you're from Maine.
From Maine.
You know what's funny? This is going to sound so cheesy. I love lobster.
That is cheesy, you're right.
And I've always wanted to go to Maine just for the lobster. I'm sure there's other reasons to go to Maine, but like
not many, man.
There will be a day when I'm eating lobster in Maine. I'm like, all right, I fulfilled one of my bucket lists.
I tell people all the time that my wife side of the family is like the quintessential Maine family. One side owns a logging company, the other side owns a seafood restaurant. So we've got lobster and toothpicks, which are the only two things Maine is known for.
Toothpicks?
Yeah, toothpicks.
I did not know that.
We're the number one exporter of toothpicks.
They're like, how do we take these big trees and get them really small to maximize the value out of this tree?
Exactly.
Toothpick.
Best margin.
Interesting. So what brought you to Arizona? You were with KW in Maine?
Yeah. So I started in real estate out in Maine. Was investing and actually doing a little bit of private lending on flips and things like that to some friends that I had. That would have been we got there 2017. So I started that 2017, 2018, got my real estate license, joined Keller Williams.
Just to be our normal realtor.
Just to be a normal realtor.
Yeah. And I say that because today you're not a normal realtor.
Yeah, so I
don't want to use that term in a bad way. It's like, that's not what you do today.
No.
But you started out, I'm just going to be a realtor.
Very quickly transitioned into management. Before real estate, for about a decade while I was going through grad school and living in the Midwest, out in Minnesota, I ran an insurance business. And running an insurance agency, very similar, I'd say, in a lot of ways to running a real estate team, right? Yeah. You're leading, you're casting vision, you're driving a sales team. And when I got my license, really missed that really quickly. And realized that a lot of the same business principles that I had applied in the insurance world applied to real estate as well. And so when an opportunity arose to go into management, I quickly went into it. I've always been a big time recruiter. I love bringing people into my world. And so it just fit the Keller Williams model, which is very growth oriented. Yeah.
So how you say you quickly got into management, for those out there did you get picked? Did you apply for it? Like, I'm sure somebody here's watching this is like, hey, I enjoy being a realtor, but I like the management side of things. Like, what does that transition look like?
Yeah. So for me, and this isn't everyone's story, but for me, before I even got my real estate license, I was actually an insurance partner, an affiliate of the Keller Williams franchise out there. And there's a big.
So you knew some of the management.
I knew a few of the people, but I was really early in that relationship, like days or weeks. And I actually spoke at an event, just like 5 minutes, doing my little sales pitch.
Yeah.
And the way that I did it, actually, the coach or the trainer that was there that day looked at the majority owner and goes, "That guy's going to run your office.
Wow.
That guy's going to run your office."
That's a visionary right there. Like that's like,
yeah.
those are cool stories.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
I mean, it's almost like
I had
gives
no
me the chills.
interest
Like
at
it's
that
really
point.
cool when
Yeah.
somebody's like, they see it, right? They see your future. They see you and see your potential.
And I'll say it took a long time for me to, when I say a long time in my mind, I mean, it was probably a process of, 3 to 6 months before I really was like,
And you say your
okay.
superpower is not execution. Look at you making quick decisions. I think there's a superpower you don't know about.
Maybe. My operations people assistant would tell you very differently. My wife would tell you very differently. It might not be my superpower, but something that I am good at is I've never prioritized perfection, even though I have a
Progress over perfection.
I really do believe in that. Yeah, and so I care what things look like. But at the end of the day, like I'd rather get it out there.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, like execution. But yeah, no, I a few months later found myself in this KW world.
Yeah. This is 2018?
2000, yeah, early 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you started in 17, then soon after that.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. I mean,
time goes by fast.
Your whole world changed pretty soon after that. I mean,
it
COVID
did.
came, but you moved out here right before COVID or in the middle of COVID?
Right before COVID, January of 2020. Yeah.
I remember 2020 was COVID, right? My years are getting all mixed up here. I remember being at the January home show with my wife and walking around, and there were some Asian booths, and not just Asian, but like from China, and they had masks on.
Oh.
And I remember asking my wife, I'm like, that's weird. I wonder why they have masks on. Oh, there's this thing going around. It's like, okay, well, maybe we should just avoid the booths just in case. We had no clue what the heck was going on. It was like January 20th. It was like a couple weeks after that it was March Madness. We were in California, and they were gonna they shut the basketball game down during one of the Suns games or a Utah game. Remember that?
Was it a Utah game?
They shut the NBA. It was I can't remember the guy's name, but anyway, they shut the NBA down, and I remember we left California thinking they were gonna close the border. Like that's how scary it felt at the time. Now looking back, we probably didn't need to, but
it was crazy. Like,
so you're living here.
I had just moved here.
You don't know anybody, and all of a sudden everything shuts down.
Yeah, and thank God we had a pool because I
gosh.
don't know what we would have done. But I remember, so being from on the East Coast, Northeast Coast, no one I knew went to Vegas, right? And so I'm out here, and March 2nd or 3rd, I had to go to a business meeting up in Vegas. It was my first time ever going to Vegas, and by that point, travel had really started to dial back. And so I arrive in the airport there in Vegas, and it's like empty. Like everything I had heard about Vegas, it was just like no lights, no casino, like nothing. It was just a ghost town. And I was like, I really felt like I was kind of in the apocalypse. And a couple weeks later, I'm
spooky
addressing the company and being like, hey, we don't know what's going on, but we're gonna get through it.
Who brought you out here? What was it? Was it like an opportunity you jumped on, or what happened?
Yeah. So in 2019, I had been with KW Maine for about 18 months.
Okay.
We recruited 230 agents that year.
So you got some people's attention.
And we became the third most profitable Keller Williams out of 880 offices.
Which, no offense to Maine, I'm sure that was the first time Maine had done that.
True story. Every time we'd get recognized on an international stage at conferences, they'd always say KW Portland, Oregon. And we'd always have to correct the international marketing team. Literally every quarter.
It's like the totally opposite side of the United States.
You're getting this shit wrong. Like it's this one, the better Portland.
Yeah.
And so you
get recognized.
Got some recognition. Met my now business partner Kristen Cole. Okay. Kristen owns about a dozen different companies and runs a really, really big real estate team, like 40 cities across the country. She and I met in Austin that summer, August of 2019. And she's like, so what's next for you? Like, you're not going to stay in Maine forever, are you? And, really what I saw in the industry, especially in franchise business, was technology was really starting to help consolidate, like allow businesses to consolidate. And so my roll of the dice, if you will, in theory was that I needed to be in a place where there was too many franchises, that I could operate effectively so that as consolidation in the industry occurred, I'd be the logical
You can
choice
ride to the
to
top.
take those. Yeah. And so really I told her that. I said, I want to be in a place where, similar to Maine, where we own the entire state, I wanted to be in a place where we could own massive, massive territory and operate effectively and scale right up. And so
That's really cool.
yeah, that's what we started to do. Yeah.
That's really cool. So she brought you out here, and your conversation with your wife was,
We
that hard for her at all?
lived a stone's throw from the ocean there in Maine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In Scarborough. And I
how,
said,
how old were your kids?
our kids were
At the time?
3 at the time.
Okay, so young enough to make a move.
Yes. And
A
we
little
were
bit harder
definitely,
when they're 12.
we had been looking as well. We're like, are we going to do another 20 years up in the snow, or are we going to go somewhere else? And
Okay.
so she was primed, but we were looking in the Carolinas. We were looking like other
Yeah,
opportunities
most people go Carolinas or Florida. Those are the big ones.
Exactly.
And if you're really crazy, you move to Texas.
Yeah. Are you from Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like the East Coast friends that I have,
Yep.
like I used to run the real estate investing world for a while, kind of where you started. And I mean, I just made friends all over the world, all over the United States from my masterminds, but it's like they rarely, when they make a move, go to California or Arizona. It's like Texas is about far west as you'll find somebody from the East Coast possibly move.
Yeah. And we had lived previously in Wisconsin and Minnesota, but that was basically as far west as we had ever gone. And so when I came home, from that conference and was like, hey, I've got an opportunity. It's in the desert. She was like, hell no. Like, that's not happening. Yeah, no, I'm not moving to the desert. You just drugged me across from Minnesota to Maine. Now you're going to drag me all the way across. And she's a business owner too. And she's like, I can't keep moving my business every couple of years.
That's a good point.
And yet she's an amazing partner. And
so how did that decision come about?
A couple weeks later, she goes, you know what? It sounds like a great opportunity. We should at least go look at it. And I think that's the cool thing about my wife for sure is she's never been afraid to explore possibility.
I'm still figuring this out with my wife. We've been married for 12 years, but it's like I'm starting to get better at figuring it out. She comes off very, very stubborn and opinionated.
Yeah.
I don't know the right word here. There's a nicer way of saying that.
Hey, we'll go with stubborn and opinionated.
Strong-willed in her opinions, but then like comes around.
Yeah.
And I just sometimes have to just be patient. And that's not one of my superpowers is to be patient. But, I just have to be patient and let her kind of think through it and process it.
Yep.
And kind of figure it out. And oftentimes she'll come around. But it sounds like your wife and you had a similar experience.
Similar, yeah.
Where you had already probably processed it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You might have processed it before you even talked to her to make sure you were committed.
Yeah.
And then now she had to process it. So did Kristen Cole, right?
Yeah, Kristen
Did
Cole,
she give you, like, you could pick any market, or was she like, I need somebody in Phoenix?
She needed specifically someone in Scottsdale. Okay. And at that point, really, that was the hub. And Kristen's big thing is in the expansion world, right? She became the number one agent in Alaska, 30 years ago, whatever, and something that she's never given up. And so she took market share there, and then she just duplicated and went down the Pacific coast. And her idea was, I want Scottsdale to be the hub, and I want everything to kind of emanate from that hub.
Does she live in Scottsdale?
And so, yeah, she lives in Scottsdale as well. Yep. And so that's what we did. So we started to really build up the foundation and the plumbing of the business here in Scottsdale. Started merging and acquiring other franchise offices across the state.
How many market centers do you own today?
So we have 3 market centers and a total of, I think we're at, if you include every office, I think we're at 14 offices.
For those that don't understand KW, explain the definition of market center office. Like
the easiest way to explain a market center is in Arizona real estate terms, that's the brokerage. Okay. Then in KW speak, we've got business centers, which are branch offices of that same brokerage. Okay. And then our mega agents are able to also hang a shingle out and have their own office.
Nice.
So that's kind of the structure. Yes.
Brick and mortar type role.
Yep.
Are you finding most agents still want to go to the office, or are you finding they like to work from home?
It's interesting. I think a lot of agents crave community, but they find community in different ways. Some of that is virtual and some of that is still in person. We're definitely we've shifted our business strategy to all of our offices being under 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
Which is definitely a change from
which
even
they
when
were
I got here.
Yeah.
You're talking like 10 to 12,000 square feet.
It's a big change.
Yeah. So we're definitely shrinking down. We're putting in our most recent offices 6 to 8 agent offices. And other than that,
big open spaces.
Big open common space for training, and that's about it.
Wow. Yeah. That's really interesting. And then the big teams will get their own space if they need it.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the only office that I've Well, that's not true. A couple offices I've been in recently of KW, that one they rented like an old, they didn't rent it, they probably bought it. The old CVS Walgreens type
Yep,
deal
that one. Yep.
over in Higley.
Yep.
I mean, that's a pretty big building.
That is
I mean,
big.
that's
Yeah.
12, 15,000 square feet or more. I don't know.
Maybe. I have
I mean,
no idea. I've never
CVS
been
is
there.
pretty big.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Why would an agent want to work with your guys' market center versus another market center or another brokerage?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing comes down to the scale, bringing agents opportunities that they don't have at some of the smaller offices. I think that's one of the
Can you
biggest
give me an
things.
example?
Access to opportunity. Yeah. So right now we are we're thinking big through all of the home services businesses and asking ourselves the question, what if an agent never has to go outside the four walls of our office for anything that touches the real estate transaction? And it's not a new concept from the standpoint of, having a lender in the office has been something that's kind of par for the course in a brokerage.
Lender, title, they're barking down your door.
Exactly. But what
But
if
the plumber's probably not.
But what if we actually went further than that? What if we actually started to acquire and fold in businesses and gave revenue opportunities in these other businesses so that we can have quality assurance of the actual product that they're doing? We can teach them how to integrate and fold it in between transactions because that's where we know clients are lost. And how can we help them really think more like business owners? I don't have to, it's no secret. Anyone that listens probably knows that the real estate industry is changing. A lot of things are, putting pressure on business owners, right? And so we've got to think like really outside the box.
Do you have any specific type of relationships that you can explain to me is it like a plumber, electrician, or is
so
it
we're
like
starting
inspection service?
So we started in all of the things that you would think. So lending, title, then we just launched insurance.
Okay. So you're starting at a high level there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And working our way down into down the service chain, if you will.
I just know a lot of agents struggle with the home repair services and the trust of the contractors. And
For sure.
I mean, it's a big issue in the industry.
It's a big issue in the industry. And we also we're not coming in from an arrogant place thinking like we're just going to be able to come in and figure it all out, right? Yeah. The biggest thing, it comes down to my clients are my agents. And in establishing and growing the trust with my agents, I need to make sure that in every single one of these opportunities, we get it right. Otherwise, we're fumbling trust with our agents and we lose agents, right? And so where do we know we can execute because we've done it before? We're going to those places first, and then we'll continue to get more and more creative down the service chain.
That's interesting. What do you feel like that's what makes you sticky? Like, I know you don't have a lot of turnover.
That makes us sticky for sure.
Right. I definitely think that's a huge value. I know that you guys run in a lot of KW offices is there's not a ton of turnover that you guys deal with. Yeah. And, it's the investing in agents, right? And other brokerages offer stuff too. And there's reasons why other brokerages are great, but you guys got to 3 market centers. Where do you think the future goes with you guys?
Yeah. So at this point, really, Ryan, we have all the territory that we need to accomplish what we need. And so right now it's all about execution. It's funny that you mentioned that word early on.
I like that word.
It's just about executing in each one of these things. We have the vision's there. We have the territory. We have the offices that we need. And throughout most of the state, we're looking strategically at a couple of different outlying areas where we could set up small offices. But generally now it's just about
Let's grow what you currently have.
Exactly. It's deliver on the value proposition that I have sold to the agents that I brought into my world in the last 4 years. Now I get to execute and continue to build that trust.
You've used that word trust a lot in the podcast so far. I'm curious if that's one of your core values to kind of shake hands with people. And I understand contracts are important, but I'm curious, and I'm really just reading between the lines here, David.
Yeah.
If one of your ways of being is like, if I shake your hand, we've got a deal. Like you could trust that I will do my part.
Yeah, my word's all I have.
Yeah, where does that come from?
I do believe it comes from my father. It comes from my father.
Is he still alive?
He is. Yeah, my dad's my hero. So I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and grew up when there was four of us siblings. Yeah. 1 bedroom in a trailer in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. And my dad.
There's your mom there?
My mom's still in the picture. Yeah.
So it was your mom, your dad, and 6 kids in 1 bedroom?
So it never got up to 6. 4 kids. It got up to 4 in the trailer when they had their 5th.
That's a lot, though.
Yeah, when they had their 5th,
like we finally moved. Than a 1 bedroom.
We have to go to a double wide. But yeah, single wide trailer. He was barely making ends meet. They were high school
How
sweethearts.
old were you when you were in the trailer park? Like, at what point did you move out of the trailer park?
We were 7 when I officially moved out of that. Yeah.
Do you remember sex and drugs and stuff that comes around trailer parks?
No, that's a great question. I really don't remember that. It was a pretty pretty clean park, from what I remember.
Sure, but there's stuff that goes on in those trailer parks.
Oh, definitely.
Do you know what I mean? But
Definitely.
luckily, you probably left at 7.
I
Does
left.
that make
Well,
sense?
and
You
we
might
actually
not have been
got
exposed to it as much.
we got out of the park at 5.
Okay.
We just brought our trailer with us.
Well, there you go.
Moved it onto a piece
Your
of
dad's
land.
like, there's too much stuff going on. I'm taking
Exactly.
my own.
Yeah, we moved into a really rural town,
Do you
1,500
remember
people.
being poor, or do you feel like you were just normal?
I do remember it. Yeah.
You remember thinking we're poor.
Yeah. Maybe not thinking we're poor. And so maybe when
Like
I
in
say,
hindsight, you recognize you were poor.
Yes.
But I'm just curious as a child if you
as a child, no, thank you for clarifying. Like as a child, no, I didn't. I
you
always
just had a
felt
normal
like I
childhood
had,
from your perspective.
yeah, I always felt like I had everything.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so hard for parents to hide the stress that comes with that. And being a parent, I mean, you deal with your own stress, whether you're making money or not. There's stress in life, right? There's stress from losing a big agent and a big team and not fulfilling on your word, even though you think you did and somebody says you didn't.
Yep.
That probably really stresses you out.
Oh, huge.
Right. And I bet there have
I've been through a lot of
times-
therapy for that, right?
I bet there have been times when that happens. And, I just can't tell you how hard I struggle as a parent with my own children of really leaving that stress. I can leave work at work per se, but like the stress of work, not bringing that home and like being truly present. And it sounds like your parents did a really good job because it's hard to avoid 4 kids in a 1-bedroom trailer. Like you're in the same room the whole time. It's like being in a hotel. I hate traveling with my kids. I have only 3. You have 4, it sounds like.
You have 3? Okay.
Yeah, you have 4 in your family. And I tell my wife, I'm like, I do not want to get 1 hotel room. Like it sucks, but let's get 2 hotel rooms so they don't have to be in the same room all day long with my family. Like, but you grew up like that.
That's how we grew up. Yeah, right across the hall, and they did a good job of that.
Wow.
Never felt like I went without. And I think that's why my dad's my hero. Is like I trusted them. They always delivered. My dad always coached me. He was always present at all the games, everything.
That's so cool. What do you do for work?
He was an electrician early on. And then what's really funny is my story and his story kind of mirror each other a little bit in that a leader took notice of him and decided, you're going to be the person that I teach because I see everything in you that I need to leave my company to.
That's core value driven, right? They saw the core values he had and who he was as a personality and said, I can teach you the skills. I love that.
That's a really good insight. And that's definitely what occurred because he went into a business, precision manufacturing, drilling holes in metal.
Wow.
And they became a world leader. And at this point, it's funny because I don't know if you're like this. I don't know how many kids are in your family growing up. But being the oldest of 6, my youngest sister is still in high school. And she's the princess, right? She got a brand new car. It's that classic story. And we're like, you don't know how good you have it.
My wife grew up with 7, and she was right in the middle. And during the 2006 timeframe,
okay,
it was a little before then. Anyways, her dad started to finally make money. They grew up super poor. They were like, you get 1 scoop of cereal poor, we can only afford so much cereal, so you get 1 scoop. And she said she remembers going to the gas station, and the dad said, go in and get whatever you want. Each person can get 2 snacks. And she remembers thinking, what's going on? This is weird. Wow. We now have money. We're rich. Like she remembers that moment,
like inflection
where
point.
like he probably had sold a few houses or something, because he was in property management and like got some money, and all of a sudden was like, you guys can go get a soda and a snack. And she remembers thinking, we made it. This is the moment we made it. So I'm sure one of the middle kids in your family at some point
had that
saw
experience.
the transition happen. In an actual like, whoa.
I think what was always like, something that I really hope to instill in my kids is just the value of money, right? And what it takes to make a dollar and keep a dollar and invest a dollar. Because that was one thing my father has always said, take the risk and make the decision. It's yours to make. Just know that here's my perspective on it. Go make the decision you're going to make, and we're going to go from there.
If I were to ask your dad, but what are the top things you're the most proud about with David, what would he say?
This past year has been pretty rough for me and my family. mostly a lot of things, a lot of bad decisions that I made, um, that resulted in a lot of hurt for people closest to me. And I think that if you asked him that now, I think what he's most proud of is that I've been willing to own my decisions and the consequences of those decisions and press on to create a better future. I think that's a pattern that's existed in my life, but it's really had to play out for my family over this past year. And
Have
so
you,
I think
without
that's
getting into the details on the podcast,
yeah.
I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. I'm assuming at some point you had to sit down with your dad and say, here's what's going. Was that a hard conversation?
It was incredibly hard.
Have you had that before?
No, no. My father has always been the person who I felt did everything right.
Mm-hmm.
And through no fault of his own, there was this intrinsic pressure that I felt on my shoulders to perform and to perform better than he did because he had given me that opportunity. He'd given me an opportunity that he didn't have himself through his hard work and through his values.
You felt like you owed it to him.
I
and
owed it
the
to
family name, your last name, everything.
Exactly. And I'll tell you exactly, like, to the extent that this played out. A couple years ago, I went back to Maine and I actually said, so it was my 27th birthday. And I said, Dad, I'm going to buy the trailer park that I grew up in. And I'm going to leave our family's pad empty as a legacy to our family. I'm going to do that by the time I'm 32 because I want there to be a tangible reminder in the state of Maine of what you've given to our family. And I want to do that for us. And so I had this pressure and I didn't just keep it internal.
That you put on yourself.
But I also externalized the pressure.
Yeah.
And so even during those 5 years, I'm like, shit, how am I going to I need to deliver on this.
You're a man of your word.
And I'm a man of my word. And so I think that's the other thing too, is like when you're not living in alignment with your values and you don't deliver on your word, life gets messy.
It does. Believe me, I skipped church the other day and my wife and I were arguing and just wasn't in the mood to be at church with her in the middle of this argument. And I went out to the desert, dude, and I just sat there and took notes and I started just typing out all my vulnerabilities and all my drama and being really honest with myself, and just bawled, dude. I haven't cried that hard in years.
How good did that feel?
Oh, it felt great. And it felt good to just be honest with myself.
Yeah.
And now don't get me wrong. It is a lot harder to be honest with your father. So
you think
being
so?
honest with yourself, I think is hard, but expressing that to somebody else and being vulnerable, it's a lot more vulnerable to be honest with somebody else. Of what you know inside.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, because I think you can lose the relationship. I think that's one thing.
There's a risk of losing his respect. There's a risk of, you'll always be a son.
Yeah.
But it's him feeling disappointed in you, which nobody ever wants to feel.
No.
Was he disappointed in you?
He was definitely disappointed in my choices, but I think his appreciation for who I've continued to become here in my 30s, has grown, as odd as that might sound. I always remember him telling me over and over, David, you have so much potential if you just apply yourself. Yeah, I'm going to max out.
The theme of this podcast so far has been execution. Just applying yourself, right? I mean, it's very kind of the theme so far that we've developed.
And what happens when you execute to such a point where you drive yourself crazy, live outside your values, and then how do you execute
Things come crashing. So have you been building back some of that trust that you've broken?
Yeah. So it's been a long year of just therapy and self-work and what are my values. And I think you might identify with this, Ryan. When you're leading an organization, so much of what you say can so easily just become a mantra that goes on repeat. I believe in opportunity. I believe in helping you achieve your potential. I believe in this and this and this. But when's the last time I went out to the desert or you went out to the desert and you actually just asked yourself, what does that actually mean? And that's something that I've had to ask myself a lot over the last year. And I'm grateful that I'm definitely coming back in tune with that.
What I love about podcasts like this is people that are watching it and that may know you or me, watching us be vulnerable, like they really relate to that. Like when you get to the heart of it, we see people on Instagram, we see people in their lives they live, and he was just in Florida and now he's going to Hawaii and whatever, right?
Yep.
Like, everything's perfect. And the reality is everybody is dealing with crap.
Yeah.
Everybody has skeletons in their closet. Everybody has stresses that they're not being honest with themselves or others about.
Yeah.
Right. And desires and fears and all that stuff. So I really appreciate you being open about that. I mean, this is our first time we're ever meeting in person,
man.
but
it's good to talk about this stuff with people. I think I don't want things like this to be taboo because you can look at all the metrics, you can look at the KPIs, you can look at the budgets and the forecasts and all this stuff and be like, holy crap, they really have it together. And it's like, we figured some things out, but for everything we figured out, we have 10,000 things running in the background that are hard.
For people that want to get in touch with you, that relate to what you're saying and relate to you and want to just get to know you better, whether they want to join KW or not, I think you're open to just hang out with people, meet people
all the time,
provide value to. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram, David D. Morse.
David D. Morse.
Yeah.
And your podcast is called what?
Real Talk with David.
Real Talk with David.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you are on the Real Estate Is show. Have you thought about what your word is or words? You get multiple words.
I'm going to do one word, man.
Okay. Look at that sexy photo, dude. Is that
Thanks,
Photoshop?
man. That's my wife. That's my wife's. She's a world-class wedding photographer. So,
all right.
My word, man, is possibility. Possibility's another. I don't know if that's the word I'd say is a value, but I love being around people who think in the world of possibility, and I've come into touch with so many people in real estate who think, what if this business plan actually works? What if I actually can hit this goal that I have? What if I could change my family's legacy?
There's two sides of that. There's the other people that are, what if this doesn't work? Right. That's the optimistic side of it, which I really like. Yeah. What are you seeing within your team and the agents you talk to with this big change coming up in June, July with NAR?
Yeah. So what I'm saying to agents over and over is you've got to focus on what you can control. I think we sometimes are agents of our own destruction because we live so much in what we don't know. And so even to the point of, I think we have even manufactured more of hysteria around this than the media itself.
Some of my best friends are like sending me messages like, dude, are 6% commission gone forever? Like, well, I mean, I know that's what it says, but that's clickbait.
Yeah. And so I'm really focused right now on saying, focus what you control, don't live in fear, and know the few things that are going to change on the horizon. But the industry's always figured it out. And the thing that's beautiful about this industry and the possibility for agents in their business is if you will focus on relationships with your clients, articulating value, there is so much market share that's going to be had by the people who live in fear and who see this as a possibility of their own destruction.
And they're going to get out, or
they're going to get out.
Or in all honesty, they may stay in and just not naturally work as hard. They'll take what comes, but not go get.
Yeah.
And it's a really good opportunity to really get market share, as you said. Yeah. I had Brian Gubernick on. He said something really insightful. Every single seller is already in somebody's database.
Yeah.
I promise you they're being marketed to by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be 10, 20 years ago, building a database.
Yep.
Guess what? You just assume your job is to steal people from others' databases.
Yeah.
That's your new job. It's the next level of...
Yeah. Put another way, the conversation used to be who owns the data. Now it's what do you do with the data?
Oh.
You go to Upwork, Fiverr, whatever. You can all capture the same information in 5 hours.
Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares? What are you actually going to do to provide value to the data that you just captured? And that goes right back into the vision that we have for our brokerage. It's helping our agents do things with that data that they might not necessarily be able to do on their own. You've got your Brian Gubernicks, you've got your, the amazing people that are on this podcast who've built incredible organizations. Wow. They have the skill and the wherewithal to do things with that data. Not all agents can do that on their own or want to do that on their own. So where do those agents find a home? Those agents who are running solid businesses, but they need that little bit of extra that the scale we have provides them to grow. that's the possibilities that we're thinking.
I love that. Is there anything I should have asked that I didn't ask today, David?
Dude, you're a good interviewer. I can't think of anything.
Well, I mean, I'd love to learn more about your family. One thing I would like to know, this is something I meant to ask that I didn't ask, is you are fostering 2 kids, or you fostered 2 kids? I don't know the right vocabulary there, so I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
But you
man.
have 2 children that were fostered?
Yeah.
That are your children now.
Yeah, we
legal
adopted
children.
we adopted 2 children out of foster care.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, so this is another thing.
I know fostering is like sometimes a temporary thing.
Yep. So and we totally went into it as a temporary thing. We had no interest in adopting. I shouldn't say no interest, but no interest in adopting out of foster care.
It wasn't part of the plan.
It wasn't part of the plan. No. So we didn't think we could have kids early on. Had twins of our own. Went down the adoption path for a short time. Backed out. Went into foster care. My wife drugged me into foster care, kicking and screaming. I said, "I'm running a business. I don't have time for this. We have our own kids." Like, blah, blah, blah. I'm worried about like what happens when they leave. I'm going to be attached to them. All the things that you would come up with as excuse. Yeah. And as my wife always knows the answer before I do. So it's funny. It's kind of it's different than our conversation earlier, where I was the one that knew Arizona before her. In most cases, it's she knows the right thing before I do, and she gently leads me.
My wife is very similar.
Yeah.
In that way.
And so that was foster care. And so I think we had 7 foster kids, one at a time.
Okay.
Loved doing that.
All babies?
All between newborn and 3 years old. And we got to be part of some really, really cool stories of reconciliation. Kids going back into good situations, either with parents or grandparents.
That's really nice to see. Those are the good stories.
And then we got to, our story's a little bit different. This could be a totally different podcast, but thankfully we didn't go through any terrible stories, which that's a reality in foster care as well. The last 2 headed towards termination of parental rights. Mm-hmm. We adopted my daughter, who's 3, and a week before her adoption in 2022, we got a call, and the call was from the state, and they said, "Mom's had another baby." We're like, "That can't happen. She's in prison, like that, Yeah. But it had happened, and they said, "We want you to take." And I had said, "No, we're done at 3. That's it. I can't do any more." As my wife, again, she goes, "We've got to do this. We've got to keep these sisters together."
She's got a big heart.
Yeah. And so in the adoption pictures with my 3-year-old, we have this newborn who is my youngest. So we adopted my my 1-year-old, and now our family's complete.
Wow, what a cool story.
It is pretty
And they're
cool.
healthy, everything good?
Healthy, everything's good.
Yeah, that is so cool. So your kids are how old?
I have twins that are 8, both boys, and then I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter.
Wow. I could see why why your wife wanted daughters. She might regret that when they're teenagers.
Dude, I already regret it.
Yeah, for now, they're as sweet as can be, man. My 8-year-old.
How old are yours?
Well, I'm 12, 10, and 8. I said my 8-year-old, she's 10. My 12, 10, and 8, but I mean, she's 10 going on 16,
Oh, man.
Yeah, so, she's starting to get into that. Okay, you get one kiss. Okay, you get one hug. She's not as snuggly as she used to be. Fine, I'll give you a hug, Dad, kind of a attitude.
I'm going to be so sad for that.
It's a very sad day. Well, thank you for coming on.
Dude, thanks for having me.